Hi, this is Richard, CEO of Altfins. In this trading video, I will discuss the outlook for Bitcoin, both fundamentally and based on a technical analysis. There's also short-term and the long-term view that you can take on Bitcoin. And I'll start with the short-term fundamental, which is right now there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, right? A lot of FUD around the distributions from Mt.Gox, as well as the German government selling the confiscated, seized Bitcoin from the movie website Movie 2K. There's been some short-term, near-term impact, although I think that there's more really fear impacting the price than the actual selling of from these two sources. But let's take a look at Bitcoin real quick. Let's look at some of the news, which is here on the news tab, and that relates to the German selling as well as the Mt.Gox. Let's see. German government resumed selling Bitcoin holdings. Let's take a look at this piece of news here and see where we are in terms of the selling of the Germans. I think there was about 50,000 Bitcoins that Germans seized and are now in the last several days selling in the open market. Okay, so based on data that I saw, I think there was about 10,000 Bitcoins transferred and sold on the exchanges yesterday. That's Thursday, as well as the day before and before as well. So I think at this point, looks like there's only about 300 million. So that would be about 4,000. Let's see, about 5,000 worth of Bitcoins or 5,000 Bitcoins left to be sold out of the 50,000. So most of it has been already sold and absorbed by the market. In fact, I'd say Bitcoin has actually traded well in the last 7 days. It's actually bounced up after the big drawdown here in the last 7 days. So while the German government is selling 50,000 Bitcoins in the last 7 days, the price has actually gone up or slightly up. And so the actual selling has not had a negative impact. And in large part, it's been offset by the buying, in part by the buying from the institutional ETFs, Bitcoin spot ETFs. We'll take a look at that as well. All right, so the Bitcoin, the German government seizure of Bitcoin and now selling of Bitcoin, I think is pretty much behind us. It's been absorbed. Now, the other big one, obviously, is the Mt.Gox. And the Mt.Gox, the data that I have here suggests that Mt.Gox distribution should be beginning this month, and they're worth about $9 billion. Okay, so to put that into perspective, first of all, I don't think that all of the $9 billion worth of Bitcoin will be sold. Let's just say it's about 50% or $4.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin market cap is about 1.1 trillion. So the Mt.Gox distribution is about 4% of the total Bitcoin market cap. 4%, it's very small. And also, put another way, the daily volume of Bitcoin, if we look at CoinMarketCap, the daily volume, I looked at it in the last few weeks, has been around $40 billion traded daily in Bitcoin, right? And that's based on what we can see. Obviously, there's other dark pools that we can't really see or aren't really captured by CoinMarketCap, for example. But as you can see, today in the last 24 hours, it traded 26 billion. But that's I'd say it's on the low end of what the daily volume has been in the last few weeks. So, but even if it's 26 billion, right, the 4.5 billion coming out of Mt.Gox that hypothetically could be sold is 15 or max 20% of the daily volume. Very little. I mean, the actual distribution by Mt.Gox will be relatively quickly absorbed by the daily trading volume. And the other thing to remember is that the investors who are going to be receiving their Bitcoin from Mt.Gox most likely have been hedging that already in the last few days or a couple of weeks since the news has been released. Hedging means that they have already, or a lot of them have already, most likely short sell Bitcoin to lock in the price, right? If I know that I'm getting Bitcoin and I want to sell it, and I'm getting Bitcoin, the price is at 60,000, I want to lock in that price. So I'm going to short sell Bitcoin at that price, and that way I own it on my Mt.Gox, and I'm short selling it at some exchange. And that way I've locked in that price at 60,000 or whatever price it was when I short sold that position. So my point is that a lot of the selling related to Mt.Gox has already occurred because a lot of the investors will not wait for the actual distribution of their Bitcoin to sell it. They actually hedged it and locked in the price by short selling it in the last few days. So that's the other reason why I think that the actual distribution from Mt.Gox is not going to be a big event. First of all, it's small relative to the market size and the daily trading volume. And second of all, a lot of that short selling or locking or selling of that Bitcoin has actually already taken place. So, I think this could be one of those sell the rumor and buy the news events, whereby when the Mt.Gox distribution actually begin to take place in the next few days, a couple of weeks, Bitcoin could actually rally, right? And the last positive uh, force behind Bitcoin is that there's been some steady buying and inflows into the Bitcoin spot ETFs, right? And these ETF funds from BlackRock, Fidelity, ARK, and then 11 or so others are basically buying Bitcoin as the investors are funneling more and more money into the funds. And as you can see in the last few days, yesterday there was net flow of 147 million, the day before 216 million, before 300 million. So there's been some really healthy inflows in the last, really call it since the 25th of June. So that's about 2 weeks, really. Right now, there were some outflows here prior to that, but in the last 2 weeks has been, the investors have been taking advantage of the pullback in Bitcoin price and are actually increasing their inflows. And so that I think will continue to offset some of this short-term supply distributions, right? So in my personal opinion, from a fundamental standpoint, looking at supply demand, I think the worst is behind us. Now I could be wrong, but I think the worst is behind us. And of course, the other longer term positive behind Bitcoin, other than the fact that it's clear that more and more asset managers and institutions are going to have to allocate 1 to 5% of their assets to Bitcoin as an asset class. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into Bitcoin in the next few years. The other thing is that looks like the inflation has peaked. and that the Fed is likely to start cutting interest rates in the back half of 2024 of this year. And you also have the November presidential elections, which could be also a catalyst for Bitcoin as well. So I'm bullish on Bitcoin fundamentally. Now let's take a look at the technical analysis view of Bitcoin. Well, how do I want to trade it? I want to own it, and I own some, but if I want to add to that position, how do I want to trade it? Okay, so here's the chart. We actually have a technical analysis that I'm going to use, but as you can see, on the short-term trend basis, it's in the downtrend, obviously. On the medium trend basis, which I use more and I emphasize more, it's also in the downtrend now as well. And that's not surprising because price has broken below the 200-day moving average, and I really need to see it break back above that. When the price breaks below the 200-day moving average, that's typically a sign of a downtrend. Okay, so it's broken above that, and now the price is trying to break back above it, right? And that's the funny part about support and resistance, is that initially the 200-day moving average acted as a support, but once broken, support becomes resistance, and that holds true for 200-day moving average, which now is your resistance, right? And let's take a look at the technical analysis that we have here, where we note that Bitcoin was trading in a sideways channel between 60,000 and 72,000 for, it was consolidating since March. So it's consolidated for 4 months in this sideways channel, and then it broke below that channel support. At the time it was 60,000 support, now it's resistance, right? So it's broken below that 60,000 critical level, also broken below the 200-day moving average, and that signals, at least on a near-term basis, that signaled temporary pullback or trend change. So what would I be doing here, or I am doing, is looking for two different entries. It is close to the support zone of 56,500. As you can see, that worked here in the past, but that's not a major support area, I would say. The major support area is around 52,000 down here. So if it pulls back there and it's oversold based on the RSI reading, by the way, this RSI down here, rarely do you see Bitcoin oversold whereby RSI is at, dips below 30. And usually those are good buying opportunities, at least sort of on a short-term basis. There's usually bounces, and that worked really well here. It even worked here when RSI dipped below 30. We had a rally, a short-lived rally. Then the RSI dipped below 30 here again. We've had a nice, 10-15% rally, right? So I'll be looking for price to either dip into this support zone of 50 to 52,000 and oversold where RSI is at or below 30. That will be my entry point for a swing trade. Or I'm going to wait here if this happens. If price actually does manage to break above the 200-day moving average and above the 60,000 resistance, which are pretty much, very close to one another. The 200-day moving average is at 59,000 approximately, and the resistance zone is 60,000. So if the price does manage to break above that, that would signal to me that all the supply and the fear has been absorbed by the market, and that the price is ready to march higher again and resume its uptrend. Okay, so I'm looking for two entries. Either we break back above the resistance of 60,000 and 200-day moving average, or we dip to the support zone of 50 to 52,000 and are oversold on RSI basis. Okay, speaking of fear, I saw in the news here that the fear index has really is really overshot, and it's overdone right here. Bitcoin fear and greed index dropped to 25, indicating extreme fear. When there's so much fear in the market, we're typically near the bottom, frankly. Yeah? Let's take a look at that article. Extreme fear for Bitcoin. Let's see. Here it is. Extreme fear right here. So that's my technical take on it, and as well as fundamental. I'm bullish fundamentally. I think we've absorbed a lot of the selling, actually, both from the Mt.Gox and the German government distributions, and there's a number of positive fundamental catalysts in terms of the buying through the ETFs, spot ETFs, in terms of the interest rate outlook and interest rate cuts coming from the Fed in the second half of this year, in terms of obviously long-term allocations from asset managers and presidential elections. And then technically, I'm looking to either jump in on the pullback to the support zone of 50 to 52,000, or on the break above the resistance at 60,000. All right, if you have any questions, please email us at invest@altfins.com, and good luck trading.